Hey everyone, Mike here, and in this video we're looking at the ASUS N750, a 17-inch multimedia laptop that bundles some very powerful hardware. Alongside the N550 that we'll talk about in a future clip, the N750 is part of the revised ASUS N line running on Intel's Haswell platforms and promises to be faster and more efficient than the previous generations. Let's see if it holds its promise. We'll start with the looks. Aesthetically, the N750 borrows much from its predecessor, but it is both slimmer and lighter than the N76. Metal is used for the entire casing, with darker sheets of aluminum covering the top and the bottom of this machine, while the silver interior is casted from a solid piece of the same material. The metal does give the N750 a premium feel, and I doubt anyone can say that this is a bad-looking machine. ASUS worked on those fine details as well. On the hood there's a backlit logo. The edges of the inner part of the laptop are now beveled and look a lot like the ones on the iPhone 5, at a different scale of course. Besides that, ASUS kept the circular drill patterns on the upper right and left sides of the keyboard, starting from those two buttons, which were introduced by their previous N line. However, this no longer covers the speakers, as you'll find out a bit later. In fact, several aspects of the new series have been redesigned. Having a look on the sides, you'll no longer see a cooling grill on the left, and that's because the cooling system was moved behind the screen's hinge. In fact, on the left side you'll find the PSU, the Ethernet slot, a full-size HDMI and a mini DisplayPort connectors, two USBs and a card reader, which can't actually swallow a regular SD card, as you can see here. On the right there are the audio and microphone jacks, another two USB slots, the optical drive, a Blu-ray player in our case, plus the subwoofer jack and the Kensington lock. As for the front, you'll only find some bright status LEDs here. ASUS changed the screen's hinge on the new N750, inspired by the one on their ZenBooks. It's larger and much sturdier, and because of that does a way better job at keeping the large screen fixed in place exactly how you set it up. Speaking about that, there's a 17.3-inch screen on the ASUS N750 with a non-glare coating and a decently slender metal bezel. The matte finishing and the lack of a glass coating suggest that this is not a touchscreen, which I for one am very happy with. Unfortunately though, ASUS only went for a regular TFT panel on this machine. It's sharp with 1920 by 1080 pixel resolution and more than bright enough, considering you'll hardly move this beast from your desk. However, the contrast and the colors are not great, and that's why the content looks a bit washed out on this display even when looking at the screen straight on. I did discover though that leaning the screen a bit more on the back than you would normally do makes everything look a bit better. Weird. Now, don't get me wrong, this display is better than what you're getting on most mid-range machines. It's a TN panel with an extended color gamut, but I wish ASUS went for an IPS screen. That would have improved the overall experience. Alright, that out of the way, let's turn our attention on the keyboard and trackpad. You'll notice that ASUS ditched the black keys they used in the past for some silver ones, and I don't like that. The black keyboard created a nice contrast with the interior, but at the same time made the ASUS look a lot like Apple's MacBooks. Still, I don't care much about what they copy and from whom. They should have kept the keyboard in black. As for the typing experience, it's decent. The keys are large, properly spaced and sturdy enough to register commands even when not pressed in the middle. There's also very little flex with this keyboard, but the layout however isn't great, with the navigational keys and the entire numpad section being narrower than the others. Besides that, the keyboard is backlit and you can easily adjust the brightness or turn on and off the illumination. Still, I'm not entirely happy with the overall experience. I can't say there's anything in particular that bothered me, but there are some fine details that did. The keys feel very plasticky. They no longer offer the rubbery finishing we saw on the previous model. On top of that, they are too tall and don't travel deep enough inside the frame to offer the feedback I'd want. These things led to plenty of typos and missed strokes in my rather short experience with this laptop. As for the trackpad, it's large enough, although not as large as it could have been considering the space around it. It's fairly smooth and fairly accurate, but like all the other clickpads I've tried on ASUS machines in these last years, it can get jumpy and crazy from time to time. Besides that, it does offer support for plenty of Windows gestures you can perform while dragging from the sides or using up to 3 fingers, and most of these gestures work fine during my tests. All those being said, it's time now to see what you can actually do with this laptop. Our unit comes with an Intel Core i7 quad-core processor, 16GB of RAM, NVIDIA 750M graphics, 2 different hard drives and an extra 24GB SSD for caching. Or in other words, this is a beast, but you can upgrade it even further. The N750 is not that easily serviceable, as you'll have to get rid of the 15 or so Phillips screws holding the entire back panel in place. But you can do that with the right tool and a bit of patience, and after that you'll be able to access the storage drives, the memory and so on. Have a look here. There are two different drives with a battery in between them. There are also two separated memory modules, one on top of the other. The SSD looks replaceable too, but because it's shorter than the average mSATA drives, I'm not sure you'll be able to find a proper replacement. So it's easier to swap one of the hard drives for a 2.5-inch SSD. The optical bay can be removed as well if you want to, and last but not least, you can see the two cooling fans pumping air towards the hinge, plus the large heat sinks. But more about them a bit later. Now let's get this back in shape and push the power button. The N750 boots in about 15 seconds or so and runs Windows 8. As a multimedia device, and especially on this top configuration, it can handle anything you might throw at it, from basic tasks like browsing, editing documents, chatting with your friends and so on, to really complex pieces of software like Photoshop, Eclipse, Adobe Premiere or 3D Studio Max and so on. And given the large screen, you can easily have two apps sharing the work area, which does improve the overall productivity. When not using it for work, you can use it for fun. After all, the N750 is a multimedia machine. Watching movies on the large screen is a real delight, despite those issues mentioned when we talked about the display. The N750 can of course deal with all sorts of movies, including high bitrate 1080p and 4K content, if you can find any. And it can run games. I have a dedicated clip showing you the gaming performances of this machine, so you should check it out. Long story short, it will run most recent titles on 1080p resolution with details set to medium, but it's not primarily a gaming machine. You should look at the ASUS ROG series for that. There is one more important thing we're mentioning if you plan on running plenty of games on the N750. This one can get very hot. The new cooling system is fairly quiet, but not very efficient when pushing the laptop. Air is sucked in from the bottom of this device and blown out behind the hinge. The hinge itself is smartly designed so the hot air will not get towards the user but behind the screen, so nothing to complain about here. However, the laptop will get very hot around the areas adjacent to those heat pipes I was mentioning earlier. In other words, the area under the ASUS logo on the screen, both on the belly and on the laptop's interior above the keyboard. That's not necessarily a massive issue, as you'll hardly ever get in contact with these parts of the laptop, but it's not a nice feeling either, especially since the entire metal interior will get warmer as a result. Anyway, I'll tell you more about the noise and the temperatures in the written review, and you'll also find there a bunch of benchmarks and more details about the hardware on this laptop, so definitely check it out after watching the video. You'll find the links in the description. Those aside, over the years, the audio system has been a strong selling point for the ASUS N line. With the new Ns, however, ASUS kind of screwed things up. The speakers are no longer behind the punctured grills on the interior facing towards the user, but they are placed at the bottom of the laptop facing towards the desk. On top of that, there are 4 of them and they are smaller than in the past. The Bang & Olufsen ice power technology is still present, but the results, well, hear for yourself. Bottom point, the sound system is in my opinion simply unusable with the volume set anywhere north of 50% because of those very annoying distortions. Having the subwoofer connected does help somewhat, as it will take care of all the low frequency sounds, but the speakers on the laptop itself will still skew the output. On the other hand, the sound system is very loud, and in most situations you'll set the volume at around 30% or so, in which case the N750 still offers better sound quality than most of the other multimedia machines on the market, but it's nowhere near the older N76 and N56. Okay, there are some other things worth mentioning about this laptop. It offers gigabit LAN and fast reliable wireless connectivity. It comes with a webcam as well, that should do for occasional video calls, although it's overall quite mediocre. Last but not least, there's the battery life. The N750 comes with a large 69 Wh battery. Given the powerful hardware, I wasn't expecting much, but the new Intel Haswell is really efficient. Of course, when running complex games, you'll hardly get about 1 hour and a half of playtime, but when dealing with lighter activities, the N750 proves quite versatile. I was able to loop a 1080p video with the screen at 50% for more than 4 hours, and with very light browsing and text editing, this laptop went for almost 5 entire hours on a single charge. All in all, the ASUS N750 is for sure a top multimedia machine. When compared to its predecessor, the N76, the new model is both thinner and lighter, while packing slightly more powerful hardware and being able to go for longer on each charge. However, the sound system and to some extent the keyboard and the overall temperatures when pushing the laptop are a step backwards on this latest series. Even so, the N750 is an option you must consider if you're in the market for a 17-inch multimedia laptop. It will be available by the middle of July, and the base versions will start at about 1100 euros over here. The top configurations, even better than the one we tested in this clip, will retail for closer to 1400 euros with 16GB of memory and a 256GB SSD plus a 1TB hard drive. So the N750 definitely offers plenty for the money, but will have to face tough competition nonetheless. More about that in the written review. And that sums up today's video. Thank you for watching, and as always, if you have any questions, leave them here on YouTube or on the site, I'll do my best to reply. Also, if you appreciate my work, make sure to leave a thumbs up on this clip, share it to your friends and subscribe to my channel for more updates. Your support means a lot and is much appreciated. Oh, and the ASUS N750 review will be available in a week or so, and I'm sure you don't want to miss it, right? Anyway, that's about it for now, but I will catch you again very soon. Cheers!